Right. Hello, everyone. Big thank you for joining us for today's session. And today we are joined by Tayamba Mwanza, who's going to be taking us through Angular animations. And this is going to be an opportunity for you to also get to know what some of these new features Angular have come up with. There have been talks of some of the libraries or modules that were there before. Sorry about that. Have been deprecated. So what exactly are out there in the new Angular animations feature? So today's session, Tamba is going to take us through it. So I hope that you do get to enjoy. In case you have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the comment section, and we should be able to highlight them when the time for Q&A starts. All right, over to you, Tayamba.
Thank you. Just give me a thumbs up. Sound is good. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so my name is Tayamba. I'm an Angular developer, and I've been so for about 9 years now. I currently reside in South Africa. And if you want to just know a little bit about
Sorry, Tayamba, I think you've muted. You're muted.
apologies for that.
Okay,
Yeah,
done.
so I was just introducing myself. My name is Tayamba. I'm an Angular developer, and I've been so for about 9 years. I currently reside in South Africa, and just a little interesting thing about me, a hobby that I've taken up is astronomy. So I love learning about the universe, about the stars, about the planets. So if you reach out to me on social, you don't only have to talk coding. If you're interested in those kinds of things, feel free to reach out as well. And I've also put up on the slide my LinkedIn and Blue Sky details. So we can begin. And before we really get into considering the Angular features that help us to implement animations, it is crucial to understand the underlying principles behind why we should care about having animations in our app, right? Because some might have this objection where they say, should we really care about animation? Is it not just some nice to have child's play? Because we know the real consequences happen in the state and the logic. So why don't we just ignore animation? Is this feeling about animation true? Can we really afford to ignore it? Well, think about this. Who are we building these applications for? Isn't it people, individuals just like you and me? And we don't just want people to enjoy looking at our apps, we want them to make sense of them, isn't it? And how do humans make sense of things? How do they make sense of the world? One of the ways in which they do that is through communication. And communication is not something that is just verbal or written. There's other forms in which we understand it. As developers, we actually already recognize this, right? We use color systems, perhaps red to indicate danger, maybe green for success. We implement readable fonts, fonts that have a particular hierarchy just to give importance to certain things. We also implement accessibility standards, not just for compliance, but so our apps map cleanly to the human mind in the way that people think. So then, animation is not just something nice to have, it's a dimension of communication. It is a tool that we can use to reach out to our users and just bridge this cognitive gap and just help our application to make sense. So, yes, animation is important because in most cases, yes, we know we're living in the age of AI, but in most cases, we are building our apps for people. Now, to demonstrate the difference that animation can make in understanding, we can really turn to real life examples, right? Motion, animation, it's a fundamental part of human communication and perception. Think about something as simple as when you wave to say goodbye to someone, right? That physical motion has meaning behind it. if I just put up my hand, you might not really understand what I mean, right? Maybe you think, oh, it's a high five, or it might seem like I'm telling you to stop what you're doing. But just that side to side animation completely changes the definition and clearly conveys what I'm trying to communicate. Another example, from the time that we have grown up, we have learned rules about how objects behave in the real world, right? So if I hold up an object and I let it go, I'm expecting it's going to fall. If it's a heavy object like a brick, it's going to fall quite quickly. If it's something light, like a feather, I know it's going to probably just glide to the floor gently. And based on that understanding of the world, I can make certain assumptions. I can work within certain rules. How terrifying it would be if, I, I dropped a brick and it fell upwards for whatever reason. I wouldn't be able to go about my life comfortably because I would be living according to rules I don't really understand, wondering when the next brick is going to fly up so it doesn't hit me in the face or something like that. Another example we can think of is if we are maybe making toast, we put bread in the toaster. After some time, what happens? Well, the bread is toasted and it pops up. And that helps us to understand that, okay, the toast has been successfully made and now I can eat it. But how annoying it would be if I put the bread in the toast and it never popped up. If you're busy like me, maybe sometimes a bit absent-minded, um, you might find that by the time you get back to the toaster, maybe the bread is really toast, right? It's burnt. And it's actually something that happened in history in the past. That was a UX decision that they made for toasters to make them pop up so that you would retrieve your toast when it's ready. Now, these are all real life examples and cases where this motion and animation helps us as humans just to understand the world. But how do we translate that into the digital space? Well, there's actually things that many of us have experienced, things that we're familiar with. For example, perhaps you are shopping and you're busy, you want to add something to your cart, but the little number or picker that shows the things that are being added to your cart is just somewhere off in the distance and it's a little bit hard to see. And so you can't really tell like that you've accidentally added the item 5 times until you really take a close look, right? So the meaning of what you're doing gets lost there, right? And what about elements just appearing and disappearing and moving suddenly? You can easily just lose track of where you are in the application because it's not really obeying the laws of physics that we're so used to. If an item moves to a certain location, it shouldn't just teleport there, but we can see that gradual progression from where it starts to where it ends up. And that just helps us not to do extra work trying to figure out what happened. And of course, many of us have also experienced using an application that has perhaps a dashboard with a lot of different things going on. And so when you log into this dashboard, everything just pops up in your face. And especially if you're a new user, you might not really know where to start. So these are the kinds of things that we experience in the digital world, or when we are developing the UI and the UX of our app. And all these problems fall under different categories, different concerns that we are going to keep in mind as we work with animation on the web. Now, what are these concerns? Well, there are about 3 that we're going to consider for today. Of course, there's more, but this is our focus for today. Number 1 is meaning, right? That animation is meaningful to the user. That motion conveys something to the user. The next is physics, working within a framework of the world that the user understands, just so that the animations can really make sense to them and they're not doing this extra work of wondering what is going on. And then, of course, we've got choreography. Things shouldn't be chaotic. They should happen in sequence, especially when there is a lot going on. So let's begin with the first focus point, which is meaning, right? So how does meaning help us? How do we understand it? Well, meaning helps the user to properly digest what is happening on the screen, especially when state changes. It can help them just to maintain context. And I'm going to give some brief examples of UI elements where we can see how meaning can help us. So the first one being lists and collections, right? When we're working with lists, often we are adding things, we're removing them, maybe we're changing the position. So if we can add meaningful animations to when certain events occur on the list, that can help the user to just maintain that context, to understand where they are in the app and not lose their place, and also really be sure of what's going on. We can also apply it in navigation, right? If the user is, we could say, moving forward in the application, perhaps they're moving backwards, maybe they open an item, so it's almost like they're going inward. These are opportunities for us to add animations so that people can also maintain their sense of direction as to where they are on the app and not just suddenly snap and they're on a new screen. Skeleton loaders, this is a very nice one for helping users to anticipate how elements are going to be laid out on the screen. So when they see that animation of these pulsing elements in their mind, they can already get ready to understand that, okay, the page is going to be laid out like this, rather than maybe having a blank page and a spinner and a progress bar, and all of a sudden, all this content just gets put in their face and it could disorient them. And then another example is when things expand or contract. We think of accordion elements. So an accordion element, you have the header, and when you click on it, it expands just to show more content. It would be better, rather than all of a sudden the height of this element changes, that it gradually reveals the contents within. That also helps the user just to maintain that continuity. So that is meaning, right? Helping our user just to maintain that understanding of what is going on in the app, maintaining the context and the continuity. So as a goal, when we're thinking about this, we want to reduce the work that our users need to do when interacting with the app. Okay. The next principle that we can focus on, the focus point, is physics, right? This helps our animations to feel natural, right? They're not jarring, they're not distracting the user, because that little bit of unnaturalness, the brain can just spend a bit of time processing what's going on there, and that can distract the user from focusing on the app. So we want these smooth animations where the user might not really even notice the animation. It's just helping them to get that understanding of the app. So if we had to use a real life example, we understand that objects have mass, and if an object is moving quite fast, and then you want it to stop safely, think perhaps of our cars when we're driving, and now we need to stop. It's better to not just slam the brakes completely. You want that gradual stop, right? That bit of resistance. And including that in our animations gives it that physics that just eases things in and helps maintain the realism so that the animations are not jarring. So once again, elements that we can use as examples, the list. Earlier, we spoke about adding things, removing things. So if we remove something from the middle of the list and we have this little animation where the list collapses around that item that was removed, we don't want that to be just like an instant, an instant animation. We want the list to close gradually, and that just gives it that naturalness. Something interesting that I found when I was doing research for this presentation is that for the skeleton loaders, you actually want to use an animation where it's pulsing similar to rhythmic shimmer that gives you 60 to 80 beats per minute. And if it sounds intimidating to you, how do I achieve that? Well, just do a quick Google. You'll see it's only about 4 lines of code to achieve that effect. So it's something that we can apply. And of course, once again, the accordions, as they reach the end of their animation, they could perhaps slow down just a little bit to give it that naturalness. So what is the goal when we are applying physics to our animations? Well, we're just eliminating the visual friction. To the user, it makes the app just feel more stable and predictable. So then the user can just rely on their instincts as they navigate on the app, because everything is just operating naturally as it does in the real world. After physics, we have the last one, which is choreography, right? So another way we can think of choreography is guidance, especially when we have a lot of things going on in the app, maybe things that we want the user to see happening one after the other. Animations can really help us to do that rather than throwing everything at them all at once. Elements that we can apply this to, once again, lists where we can just stagger the items as they enter into the DOM by a certain delay. So this just gives that, as it mentions, their waterfall effect, guiding the eye from the top to the bottom of the list. When it comes to the skeleton loaders, instead of just snapping between the skeleton loader and the UI element, perhaps we can fade the element in, just giving it that smooth handover. And of course, we gave the example earlier about dashboards, all these elements that just hit us in the face when we log in. Well, perhaps we can animate in some of the more critical elements first, and then the lesser used ones earlier, so that the user can just focus on those critical parts of the dashboard. When it comes to choreography, what is our goal? Well, we want to just prevent cognitive overload. We don't want our users to do the work of trying to understand, if many things change. What all has changed? Where do I look first? We want to guide them to where they should go, and by those means, we eliminate the extra work that they're going to be doing, making the app more digestible. So now that we've considered these focus areas of animation that we want to keep in mind, particularly on the web, what tools do we have to help us achieve all these animation effects and make our app more meaningful and understandable to our users? Well, in the past, in Angular, we had a package called Angular Animations, but in recent times, we've now switched to encouraging native CSS, maybe other JavaScript libraries. And Angular has quite a lovely built-in tool to assist with that, but we will get to that later. So to begin, we had Angular Animations, but Angular Animations had this proprietary domain-specific language. That's what DSL stands for. So there was this specific language that you had to learn to use Angular Animations. So on top of learning TypeScript, CSS, HTML, all these other things, you now had to set aside space in your mind just for this Angular Animations language. It was also closely coupled to Zone.js, so depending on the way that you wrote it, that could affect your performance. And of course, it could be hard to debug this specific Angular library using the browser dev tools. So what happened in between that old way that we used to do things in Angular versus the current way? Well, CSS improved tremendously, and it continues to improve. I posted once on socials that it's actually getting hard to keep up with all the new things that CSS is doing, and this is one of the ways in which it has really benefited us, in that they really improved the animation system. It's debuggable, it's portable. So if you now want to use these animations in other frameworks or in For other tooling, it's portable. You can use it. Whereas the Angular one was very tied to just Angular specifically, right? You had that lock-in. So with all these improvements in CSS, well, the Angular team decided to embrace all these improvements, and they built in these new APIs. You can see I'm displaying here animate enter, animate leave, and we're going to go over the syntax for how they work just a little bit. But yeah, we pair that with CSS animations, and there's also a way to interface with JavaScript libraries by means of them. So it's mentioned here the trajectory is clear. Angular is moving towards standards, right? What you learn now is portable, and it transfers to any modern web context. Okay. So just for the sake of comparison, here we see the old, on the left-hand side, right, the old Angular animations library. And you can actually even see at the top there, we had to import all these various functions from the Angular animations, and you had to learn how to use this animation property with the array and all these functions within it in the old Angular animations package. On the right-hand side, we can see it's a lot simpler. We're just using CSS keyframes, and we have a CSS class that when that is applied, it will play the animation. And you can see, especially on line 6 by the div, we're just applying animate.enter, and then we put that class on there. So when this element enters into the DOM, it will play the animation. Pretty straightforward, don't you think? So how do these APIs look? What are some of their features? Well, we just had a look at the animate.enter, where you just apply the class, and that will play the animation as soon as the element enters the DOM. We can also have it dynamic, right? So if you want to swap out a different class, well, then you can use the binding syntax here, and then you can have the dynamic animations, basically. And in fact, something I saw a bit late is that this is not limited to just one class. Like, you can have multiple classes that get applied for this particular API. If you want to interface with JavaScript, well, then you also just use that event binding syntax. And when the animation event fires off, well, then you can call the JavaScript function. And this allows you to use JavaScript animation libraries if you prefer that. So these are just some basics of these new Animate APIs. And I did prepare just a basic demo, just a few things, and also some things I'd like to share with all these things that Angular has provided that has helped to make animation, working with animation, very easy. So I'm going to open up my IDE here. And the first thing I want to share that is on the, like, a side note, is the View Transitions API, which is quite helpful when switching between different views. And the Angular team made it quite simple to use it on the router. So in the app.config, in the provide router, you can just put with view transitions. And I like to put this skip initial transition because it means that the animation won't play like when you load the app up for the first time. Right? And you'll see why I prefer this one with the particular animation that I'm using. So the particular animation that I'm going to be using, you'll see it here in the styles. I've just defined it in here, where there's a slide in and slide out animation. And this is going to apply to the page itself. And I like this animation because it mimics a lot of how the native apps work, right? When you click on something and it takes you to another page, there's like that slide transition. And if you are a bit worried, like, how do I work out how this view transition syntax works? Well, the Angular team also has you covered there. If you go to angular.dev and you look up the view transition documentation, they actually give you some examples of how to set this up. So if I show my browser, and I'm just going to pull out of the slide quickly, and I'm going to go to this Angular app that I've got prepared, and then you can see the view transitions at work there. So when I click on a route, it actually slides me to the next page. So I think it just gives that little extra for your web app to stand out. Another thing that I'd like to demonstrate, those principles that we mentioned earlier about keeping in mind meaning, keeping in mind physics, keeping in mind the choreography. I actually prepared example by means of this list. So this list over here has no animations, basically. So if I click here and I add, yes, you can see the list is changing, but there's a little bit of work that you're having to do just to keep track of how this list is changing, right? Similar thing if I remove items. Over here, I'm removing at the top, but if I go down to the bottom here, there's just a bit of tracking that you have to do on your own. So now we have another page which is implementing all these animation ideas. So already we have the choreography, right? The guiding. So when I refresh the page, you'll see the list staggers, right? If I refresh it, there you can see, and that kind of just guides your eye down the list, doesn't it? That's just how your brain picks it up, makes it a little bit smoother when it's rendering rather than just a sudden flash of content. If I now add a person, you can see that the person's being added to the top of the list. Just extra work that your brain doesn't have to do, right? You can understand that, okay, I've clicked here, the person's been added at the top of the list. Perhaps you could have another animation where the person is added at the bottom of the list. Maybe you would scroll down to it, but that would just help the mind to keep track of what's going on and not lose your place in the app. Similar thing when I need to remove an item or element, you'll see if I remove it from the middle here, there it's a bit smoother for your eye to track what is actually going on in the application. So just by applying those principles, you can see the difference that it makes. It can really help your user to make good use of the app. And yeah, I believe it demonstrates that animations is not just something nice to have, not just to prettify your app, for lack of a better word, but there's actual utility to it. In the same way that we have utility for our colors, for our fonts, let's also give our animations utility and use it purposefully. If you're wondering how the stagger animation works, it's actually quite interesting. If I go to this welcome component, there's actually a CSS variable that is created, this stagger delay. And what happens in the template is we targeting that CSS variable. We're getting the position from the Angular for loop, and then we're just applying the time and the unit, right, the millisecond. So as each item comes into the DOM, it then checks the position, does that calculation, applies it to the CSS variable, and then that is how this list is staggered. And pretty straightforward. If you want to spend a lot of time learning how to do this, go and watch the old Angular animations package, how to get this stagger working with all the things that Angular was doing. So this is quite a lovely thing to have, and quite a simple and lovely gift that the Angular team has given us. So what are the key takeaways after this presentation? Well, it's important to remember that animation is communication, right? It does have meaning. It's important that we want to ground this motion that we're doing in physics so that it's a lot smoother. And then, of course, we want this choreography so that the user can keep track of things that are going on, especially if there's many things happening. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the presentation. And if you would like to reach out to me or continue the conversation on animations, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or Blue Sky, and I'm always happy to keep the conversation going. Yeah, and that is it.
All right. Thank you. And thank you very much, Tayamba. I think that was a very great session. And just as a heads up, I think this is for those who are very much into like making use of AI with regards to coming up with boilerplate code for the Angular apps. So make sure that whenever the AI gives you the provide animations module, make sure you remove it because it's deprecated. And I think by now, I think by V21, you should see like an information there telling you that it's been deprecated or it's going to be deprecated in the next versions to come. So make sure you write like really good animations. I think from what I saw, the conversation was people want to leverage more on the native CSS for animations and also. Uh, please be sure to check that out. I think we are having we have a few questions. Just gonna put it up on screen. So Kiplagat is asking, can you animate CSS grid or Flexbox layout changes with Angular animations alone?
So I didn't dig into that, but I did see when I was doing my research briefly that there are animatable properties on the grid. So it should be possible. You might have to do a little bit more work than what we showed now, but from that brief look that I had, I just saw it before the presentation. I was like, I don't have time to put that in now. But yeah, you should be able to achieve that. Yeah, using the CSS and this new API.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else maybe who has a question, feel free to drop it in the chat as well. So maybe on a developer experience perspective, Tayamba, maybe you can also share with us, like, how has it been for you, for example, leveraging on native, CSS code for animations? Like, do you feel that it's more modular, or maybe is it easier to work with? Is it cleaner? How's the developer experience for you?
Yeah, so what I can say is, I mentioned that I've been busy with Angular for like 9 years. So I did use the old Angular animations package. And I'm not saying this like in a negative or whatever, because I know there was a lot of work in that and it was a powerhouse. But the difference in terms of how much effort you have to put into thinking of animations, um, because back then you would be like, oh, I'd like to add an animation here, and perhaps you now spend hours Stack Overflow, Google, why is this not really? But leveraging the CSS animations, it's very straightforward, and there's a lot of documentation about it, and it feels a lot better because, like you mentioned, it's native. It's just natural, and you could just take that CSS and put it in another app if you need to. So yeah, just one thing I can mention, a CSS library that I do use is called animate.css. It's just a CSS file, but it has pre-made animations, and you can just apply the class, and it's a lot easier now with this animate.enter, animate.leave. So yeah, if you're interested, that's one of the tools that I like using.
Okay, thank you. We have one who said that they joined in late, but they have a question. How do you handle animation when using on push change detection?
Okay. So this particular topic, I haven't looked it up, but the old Angular animations package was tied to the Zone.js, right? But now we know that Angular has been moving more to signals and even rendering without the animations. So I speak under correction there, but I believe that when it comes to on-push change detection, all you would really need to worry about is updating things immutably so that the change detection kicks off. So I think that's the only thing you really need to worry about, and the animation should work. But of course, I speak under correction there.
Yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else who has a question, feel free to ask as well. Also just another tip as well for those who are making use of coding assistants. It's always there's going to be a time where, of course, you're going to see a bit of repetitive code whenever sometimes you direct the AI, tell it, I don't want you to import animations or provide animations, use native CSS animations. So always just add it maybe in your agent guide, because so that at least whenever you're sending in something, maybe for example you wanted to build for your particular animation for a particular element, it always has that in context. That's very, very important. Yeah, and I think Angular now also has Angular skills as well. So they're always updating it with some of these best standards with regards to Angular, and also always good to check that out.
Yeah. Wayne,
Yeah.
if I can add there,
Yeah.
100% agree with you on that tip. When I was learning the animations, because I was short on time, just to help scaffold the demo app, I did use some AI there. And now and again, it would do what you mentioned, where it would bring in the old package or bring in an old syntax. So yeah, using the skills file, the MCP, that helped me. And I could even sometimes just put the link directly from the documentation in the prompt, and that would keep it on track. So especially because this is now a newer way of writing Angular, you might find that you need to do that. So yeah.
Thank you. And we've shared a link in case you want to know more about Angular animations. The Angular team has provided like a really good documentation on how to move away from the Angular animations to the CSS native ones. Really good, especially if you want to go deeper into it. I remember when I was working for one company, we used to create our own animations, and that was when I learned more about keyframes and all that, things to do like with the shimmer effect, on how to build your own so that you can always reuse them. We were always told like not to import a lot of libraries or modules that don't really make too much sense in terms of in how our app works, because sometimes if the library or if the package is not tree checkable, then you're going to have a lot of issues with regards to app performance. So people always go for creating their own in the design system, and then should be good. So yeah, definitely check out that. Quite a lot of videos as well on YouTube on how to migrate to native CSS. Really, really good documentation on that. I usually use this sometimes from time to time to just get to understand what exactly is happening, especially with regards to some of these new features that are coming into Angular. So yeah, just wanted to highlight that. Okay, don't know if there's anyone who has a question. Another question? Yeah, I think remember we were always told like don't make your elements boring, like add some little bit of sprinkles, animations and all that. So all is good. Yeah. Right. Punyas is saying, amazing session. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Thank you us all for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It's just something that added in here, that make it have meaning, not just to make it look nice, but also guide the user. That's why I like that list example, because I've experienced that. We have this long list and now you delete it. And while it's not like you're going to spend an extra 30 minutes, it is your brain just now, where's the, and so if you can cut that out, why not cut that out for the user to just not have to deal with it? So,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much, Kiplagat, as well. Says he learned a lot.
thank you.
All right. I think if there's no question, I'd like to bring the session to a close. I don't know, maybe Tayamba, do you have any parting shot?
No, just thank you so much for, having this arrangement in place and for giving many the opportunity to grow and learn by means of this. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. That I think we have a question here from Henry. It says, are there any open Angular roles here in Kenya? Yes, Henry, there are quite a number of them. We usually share with them on our Angular Kenya WhatsApp group. So in case you are there, please just follow up on that. We usually share the opportunities over there. But if you're not part of that, just search for Angular Kenya on Twitter and then just DM them, and then they'll share with you the WhatsApp group link so you can join. Yeah, but there are definitely quite a number of these opportunities in Kenya. Yeah, we have so for example, like in Kenya, most of the Kenyan banks actually use Angular. So just to mention a few, the likes of I&M, Equity Bank, Cooperative, KCB, yeah, and most of them have like huge enterprise application that leverage on Angular, and they always post job openings on Angular developers, and we usually share them as well in the WhatsApp group. Yeah, Alex says thank you. So yeah, thank you very much as well, Alex, for joining us. And Joy says amazing session. All right, guys, thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you in the next session. Please, once again, this video is going to be available for you to watch later on. And yeah, we hope also to see most of you at our upcoming annual meetup, or we usually call it our annual meet and greet, where we just come to have a conversation with our community members, chat about some of these latest Angular features. So we definitely hope to see you at Angular Connect at iHub Nairobi. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tayamba, for joining us and gracing the occasion with your expertise, and really appreciate it. Yeah, and we hope to see you again next time.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.